You finally find it. Tracks cut through the mud, droppings scattered along the edge of the timber, a rub on a little spruce that looks like it was made by the bull you came here to kill. Maybe there's even a wallow tucked back in a seep, and the whole place smells like elk. So you slow down, your confidence jumps, and you tell yourself, "This is it. I found them." Then you spend the next day there. Nothing. You come back the next morning. Nothing. You sit the wallow, you watch the trail, you creep through the timber, you circle the bench, you glass the surrounding parks, you listen right at daylight, you call into the dark cover, still nothing. And that's when the truth starts to hit. You didn't find elk, you found evidence that elk had been there. And that's the difference here that we're going to talk about that can save seasons. Most hunters don't struggle because they can't recognize elk sign, right? They know what tracks look like. They know what droppings look like. They know a rub when they see it. They know a wallow when they step around one. The problem is that they read sign like it's a conclusion to their problem instead of just evidence to the solution. They see sign and stop thinking. But the best elk hunters I know see sign and start asking more and better questions. How old is it? Which direction were they moving? What were they doing? Why were they using this spot? Did pressure change the pattern or are they still using it? Can this sign actually be hunted today? That's what we're going to fix in this episode. Because if you keep reading elk sign the wrong way, you won't just waste a few hours, you can waste your entire season. Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years. I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I've spent a lot of my former years as an elite athlete, and all of that has helped me be able to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter. Now, before we get into tracks, rubs, beds, wallows, and poop, we've got to fix the way most hunters emotionally react when they find sign. A track is not proof that elk are close right now. It's just proof that an elk stepped there at some point. A rub isn't proof that a bull is living there. It's proof that a bull used that tree at some point. A wallow isn't proof that you need to sit there all day. It's just proof that an elk used that mud, that water, and that location sometime under some condition. That some point is where a lot of hunts get lost because some sign is 10 minutes old. That's great. But some sign is 2 days old. It's less great. And some sign is from last week or from the early part of the rut. Some sign is from a different pressure pattern. Some sign is from a different weather cycle. And some sign is from a completely different seasonal use of that country altogether. When you find elk sign, don't let the excitement shut your brain off. Let it sharpen your thinking. Don't ask, did elk use this? We know they did. There's sign there. Ask, are elk still using this? When are they using it? Why are they using it? And can I hunt it without blowing the area apart? That one shift changes everything. Elk sign should never be the end of your search. It should be the beginning of a better investigation. Once you stop treating sign like proof, the next step is learning how to filter every piece of evidence you collect before it controls your decision. The first question is age. How old or how fresh is this sign? Was it made this morning, yesterday, 3 days ago, 3 weeks ago? Fresh sign and old sign can sit on top of each other. And if you treat them the same way, you're just guessing. The second question is direction. Where were the elk going? Were they headed towards bedding? Were they headed towards feed, toward water, towards security, away from hunters, back towards private ground, up into dark timber, down into a lower pocket? The third question is purpose. Were they feeding, traveling, bedding, watering, rutting, escaping pressure, or just passing through? The fourth question is pattern. Is this one random clue, or are you actually seeing repeated use? One track tells you very little. Fresh tracks, fresh droppings, disturbed feed, and a clear exit trail tell you a lot more. The fifth question is huntability. Can you actually kill from this information? Can you approach it with the wind right? Can you beat the elk there? Can you set up without your thermals dumping into the trail? That's a system. Age, direction, purpose, pattern, Huntability. If a piece of sign can't answer those questions, it might still be useful, but it shouldn't control the rest of your hunt. Now, let's start with one of the most common pieces of elk sign hunters find, and one of the easiest pieces to read the wrong way. A lot of elk hunters find poop and instantly feel better. They slow down, they whisper better, they start acting like elk are about to step out any second. And sometimes that's probably the right response, but a lot of times it's not the right response based on the age of the sign, because old scat can be everywhere in good elk country. It can be on benches, in parks, on trails, around wallows, near water, and through bedding country. I've found it in rocky, pointy places where I never would have thought that I would find elk sign. But old quantity doesn't beat current quality. A drainage full of dry, faded, weathered pellets might tell you elk used that country during a previous weather pattern. Maybe they were there before pressure. Maybe they were there when the feed was better. Maybe they were there before a change occurred that pushed them somewhere else. Maybe they were just there during a different part of the rut. That's not useless information, but it isn't enough to anchor your hunt in that area. Fresh poop is very different, right? It has moisture, it has shine, it has strong odor, it has better texture and color that hasn't been beaten down by the sun, the wind, and the weather. And even then, you've got to ask whether it's one elk just passing through. Is it multiple elk using the area repeatedly? That's the clue that we need to pay attention to. One fresh pile makes you curious. Multiple piles, ages of fresh scat mixed with fresh tracks, feeding sign, bedding sign, and travel direction, those all start building a real picture. Poop doesn't say stay here. It says ask better questions. Tracks can tell you even more than poop, right? But only if you stop staring at the track and start reading the route. A lot of elk hunters look at tracks and ask one question. Are they fresh? And that's important, but it's not enough. It's not all the information you can get from it, right? A fresh track is only valuable when you understand the story around it. Direction matters. The stride length matters. Group size matters. Terrain matters. The way the track sits in the dirt, mud, dust, or snow matters. What's on top of the track matters. What's been disturbed around it matters. That's a lot to consider just from a track, right? Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the Elk Hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the Elk Hunting E-book Series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post-Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory. It's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. You know, a sharp edge tract in soft mud tells a different story than a rounded tract that's been softened by the sun and wind. Fresh dust kicked over old ground matters. Wet soil exposed under dry crust matters. Grass bent in the direction of travel matters. Snow can obviously teach you more than almost anything else because it shows timing and direction so clearly. Biggest mistake is staring at the track instead of stepping back and reading the line of travel. Where did the elk come from? Where are they going? Were they meandering and feeding? Were they walking single file with purpose? Were they climbing towards a bedding bench or dropping towards water, leaving a meadow, cutting away from a trailhead, moving into timber after daylight pressure? The track matters, but the exit trail matters more. When you find tracks, don't just celebrate. Get quiet, step back, and read the route. Tracks aren't just marks on the ground, they're arrows in a bigger system. Now, rubs are another major piece of sign that can fire a hunter up pretty fast, right? And they're also one of the easiest clues to overvalue. There's just something about finding a shredded tree in September that makes your mind jump straight to a bull. And sometimes that rub really is part of an active bull pattern, but a lot of times it's nothing more than history with a lot of bark missing. A rub can mean a bull stripped his velvet. It can mean that he was really fired up for a little bit. It can mean that he passed through once. It can mean he was with cows. It can mean he used the area last week. It can mean he used that drainage at some point during the rut phase. And it can also mean almost nothing by itself. That's why one rub is never enough. You've got to read freshness. Is the bark bright and newly torn? Is there fresh sap? Is there shredded material still clean and soft? Are the edges wet, sticky, and fresh looking? Or is everything dried, curled, hardened, faded, and weathered? One thing that I commonly see on rubs that aren't fresh is spider webs, right? Even if they're only a few days old, a lot of times they'll have a spider web on them, and I know that they're not super fresh. Then you've got to read the context of the rub, right? Is it one rub or a rub line? Are there fresh tracks, fresh poop, cow and calf sign, beds, feed, water? A wallow, a travel corridor, a wind advantage. Most importantly, ask why the bull was there. Was he traveling, checking cows, using a staging area, moving between bedding and feed, working the downwind side of a cow group? Rubs don't just tell you a bull existed. They force you to ask what pulled him there, right? Now, wallows, those create the same kind of excitement as a rub because they look and smell like elk, but they can either tighten your plan or waste a lot of your hunt. A good wallow looks like a promise. There's mud, there's tracks, there's smell, torn up ground, nearby rubs, and dark timber close enough to make your imagination run wild. It feels like a place you should sit. And sometimes it is, but a wallow can also waste a pile of valuable hunting time. Some wallows get used in daylight, but some get used almost entirely at night. Some are active for a short window and then go cold. Some are used by one traveling bull. Some are community spots. Some are tied to bedding. Some are tied to rut movement. Some look fresh because water's moving through them. Some look muddy for days because the water is stagnant and sediment just stays suspended. So don't hunt a wallow just because it looks really good to you. Read the whole system. Are there fresh entry and exit tracks? Is wet mud splashed onto grass, brush, or nearby trees? Are there fresh rubs close by? Are the trails coming from bedding, feed, or a transition route? Can you tell which direction the elk left? Can you set up with the wind and thermals in your favor? The wallow isn't always the kill spot, right? Sometimes it's just the clue that tells you where the bull is moving. And that's the difference between sitting sign and actually hunting the elk. Now, beds take the conversation even deeper because they don't just show you where elk passed through, right? They show you where elk felt safe enough to stop and hang out. And that matters because elk might travel through a lot of country. They might feed in one place, water in another, rut in another, and pass through all kinds of terrain. But bedding usually gives you a deeper look at their security system because that's where they decided to anchor. A fresh bed has life to it. Grass is pressed down, needles are disturbed, the outline is defined. There might be fresh hair, poop, urine, tracks, or soft soil where elk got up and left. Old beds lose that definition pretty fast. They collect debris, they blend back into the ground. But don't just find beds and charge through the bedding area, right? That's how hunters take good information and destroy the area. When you find beds, you got to slow down and think it through, right? Are they fresh? How many are there? Are you looking at cow-calf bedding, a small group, or a lone bull? What wind advantage did the elk have right there? What visual advantage did they have? What trails lead in and out? Where's the feed? Where's the pressure? A bed doesn't just tell you where elk lay down, it tells you where they trusted the country, and that's a serious clue. Do you understand bedding? You've also got to read the piece a lot of elk hunters don't study carefully enough, and that's the feed. And I'm not talking about finding feed in some easy-to-find meadow. I'm talking about really understanding how feed is connecting to the rest of an elk's needs. And I think that's a mistake because elk movement is often built around food tied to security, water, breeding behavior, weather, and pressure. And if the feed changes, the pattern can change. And feed sign can be really subtle. It might just be clipped grass in a small opening. It might be browsed brush along an edge. It might be nipped forbs along the inside of the timber edge. It might be a little hidden pocket that doesn't look impressive on a map, but has fresh tracks moving through it every morning. It might be a north-facing bench with enough feed and enough cover for elk to stay alive during daylight. And that's the part a lot of elk hunters miss. They look for the big obvious meadow, the pretty park, the basin that screams elk on the satellite imagery. And yes, those places can matter, but during pressure, elk might not want to stand in the obvious places where every elk hunter can see them, right? Sometimes the best feed sign is tucked into that cover. Sometimes the elk aren't using the most food, they're using the safest food. You should hear that again, right? Sometimes it's the safest food. So when you find feeding sign, don't just ask, can elk eat here? Ask, can elk feed here and survive here in daylight? That question is going to point you towards better country. But even good feed, good bedding, and good sign can change fast once hunting pressure enters the country. This is where a lot of elk hunters lose the plot of the story. They scout an area before season, they find sign, they build their confidence. Then opening week hits. Hunters enter the country, camps show up, trailheads fill, roads get traffic, calls start echoing through the drainages, and elk adjust. The sign is still there, but the meaning has absolutely changed. Before pressure, tracks across an open meadow might tell you where elk were feeding. After pressure, the most important sign might be the exit trail leaving that meadow and diving into dark timber. Before pressure, a wallow might be active in a way that's visible and huntable, but after pressure, it might still be getting used, but only at daylight. Before pressure, elk might tolerate a basin that looks perfect, but after pressure, they might shift to the ugly pocket nobody wants to climb into. Pressure doesn't make sign useless by any means, but pressure does change which sign matters. So when you read sign during the season, don't just ask, what did elk do, right? Ask what people have done to the elk's pattern. Where are the roads? Where are the camps? Where are the easy glassing points? Where are hunters calling from? Where does the country let elk escape without leaving the larger area? Fresh sign on the backside of pressure is often more valuable than old sign in perfect looking spots. And that's why the next mistake is building an entire hunt plan from just one exciting clue instead of stacking all the evidence you can. One rub, one track, one pile of scat, one wallow, one trail, one bed. Those things absolutely matter, and they help us narrow things down. But by themselves, they're pretty weak evidence. They should make you curious. They shouldn't make you committed. Better elk hunters stack their evidence. A fresh track is good. A fresh track with fresh poop is better. Fresh tracks and poop leaving a feeding pocket headed towards a timbered bench are way better than that. Add in beds, multiple ages of sign, wind advantage, and a huntable approach, and now you've got something. That's how I need you to start thinking about this. Level 1 sign says elk were here sometime. Level 2 sign says elk were here recently. Level 3 sign says elk are using this area repeatedly. Level 4 sign says elk are using this area in a pattern. And level 5 sign, the holy grail of sign, says I can build a huntable setup from this pattern. Most elk hunters get excited at level 1 or 2 and they start hunting like they've reached level 5, and I think that's a mistake. One clue makes you curious, stacked clues makes you dangerous. You're not looking for random sign, you're looking for connected sign that explains how elk are currently using the country. Now, once the evidence does start stacking and the sign is fresh, the way you respond in the next few minutes matters a ton. A lot of elk hunters find fresh sign and instantly start moving faster because they're excited, and that's usually backwards. The fresher the sign, the more careful you need to be, right? They might be right out of your sight. If the sign is extremely fresh, you've got to stop, think it through. Don't take 10 more noisy steps just because your adrenaline jumped and you've got fear of missing out. Check the wind, check the thermals, look ahead, listen, Smell. Move into the I'm going to only take 2 or 3 steps and look around phase, right? Think about where the elk are likely at right now. Are they ahead of you, above you, below you? Did they already cross through? Are they bedded close? Are they feeding just out of sight? If the sign is fresh and directional, don't just follow it like a blood trail. Elk aren't wounded animals leaving you a direct path, right? If the wind is bad, you're probably going to ruin everything. If the terrain gives you a better route, use it. Sometimes the actual move is to loop, climb, drop, or cut ahead to where the trail's going instead of walking right on top of it. If fresh sign points into bedding, be even more careful, right? I don't like hunting bedding areas most of the time. That might be a situation where the best move is not charging in. It might be setting up outside that core area and waiting for evening movement or backing out and coming in with better wind. Fresh sign is absolutely a gift, so don't waste it by rushing. Now, on the other side of that, old sign still has value, but only if you keep it in the right category. But it's dangerous when you treat it like current information. Old sign can show you that elk have used that area before. Great. It can reveal historical bedding or rut travel, wallow locations, transition routes, and seasonal patterns. It can help you understand the country. It can tell you that a drainage has the ingredients elk need at certain times. But old sign should not steal your best daylight hours without a reason. If every poop is dry, every track is rounded, every rub is hardened, every bed is filled with debris, and every trail looks unused, you need to be honest. You might be standing in elk country that isn't currently holding elk in a huntable way. And that doesn't mean the area is bad forever. It just means today's evidence isn't strong enough. So mark it, learn from it, ask what season, weather, pressure level, or rut phase might make it useful again, then keep moving with purpose. The problem definitely isn't finding old sign. That's fine. The problem is emotionally attaching yourself to it because it's the only evidence you've found. Old sign should educate you, but fresh sign should really be what influences today's decisions. Repeated fresh sign tied to terrain should change your plan, and that's the hierarchy there. And sometimes the most useful information you find isn't sign at all, it's the complete absence of it, right? No fresh tracks, no droppings, no beds, no rubs, no wallows, no smell, no sound, nothing. It feels like failure, but no sign is information if you're willing to use it. If you're in country that should hold elk and you're not finding current evidence, something about your assumption is probably wrong. Maybe the feed isn't current, maybe the water changed, maybe the pressure moved them, maybe they're using a different elevation band, maybe they're moving at night and spending daylight in a secure pocket you haven't checked yet. Maybe the basin looks good to hunters but doesn't solve what elk actually need right now. And that's not failure, that's just search narrowing. But you've got to respond correctly. Don't wander, don't panic, don't keep hunting dead country just because it looked good on a map. Shift to the next most likely system, your backup plan, right? All those extra plan B, C, D, E that we talk about. Check the security cover, check the escape side of pressure, check the hidden feed, check the transition routes, check the benches that don't stand out from a distance, check the ugly pockets that a lot of elk hunters walk past. No sign doesn't mean you're done. It just means the mountain is helping you eliminate bad assumptions. Now, all of this leads to the rule that can actually change the way you read elk country for the rest of your hunting life. Read elk sign as a question, not a conclusion. A rub asks, why was a bull here? A track asks, where was that elk going? A pile of poop asks, how recently were elk using this spot? A bed asks, why did elk feel safe enough to stop here? A wallow asks, when is this being used and can I hunt the movement connected to it? No sign asks, what assumptions did I make that need to change? That's how better hunters think. They don't just identify sign, they interpret it. They don't just get excited because elk were there at some point. They ask whether elk are still using the area, whether pressure's changed it, whether the sign connects to feed, bedding, water, rut behavior, or escape cover, and whether it creates a setup that they can actually hunt. That's the big difference between recognizing elk sign and actually reading elk sign. Recognition tells you that you're looking at sign. Interpretation tells you what to do next. And in elk hunting, what you do next matters more than what you found 5 minutes ago. Elk sign can absolutely save your season, but only if you read it in the right way. Tracks, Poop, rubs, beds, wallows, trails, and feed sign are all pieces of the same story. None of them should control your hunt by themselves. They have to be connected to timing, direction, purpose, pressure, terrain, wind, thermals, and huntability. And that's where a lot of elk hunters get stuck. They find sign and feel like they've found elk. But the better question is whether they found current, repeated, explainable, huntable elk use, right? That's the standard. So the next time you cut a track, find a rub, step around a wallow, or walk through a bench full of droppings, don't just stop in excitement, right? I want you to slow down, read the evidence, ask what it proves, what it doesn't prove, and what decision it should lead you to next. Now, if this episode made you realize you need a better elk plan this season, don't just watch another video and hope it all comes together. Build the plan now. If you want to study my full system on your own, start with my Elk Hunting series of ebooks. If you want daily guidance, accountability, and a place to ask your questions as season gets closer, join Team Backbone. I'd love to help you there. If you want my eyes on your actual hunt plan before season, your maps, terrain, access, pressure points, wind, thermals, and your strategy, book an Elk Hunt Plan Audit with me and I'll get you squared away. And if the missing piece is your body, your legs, your lungs, your ability to handle mountain miles and a heavy pack, check out my Backbone Unlimited training plans. If nutrition is where you need more structure, whether that's getting leaner before season, fueling long days in the mountains, or building a better in-season food plan, check out my nutrition plans as well. The hunters who are ready in September are the ones who start tightening their plan right now. So go to backboneunlimited.com and choose the path that fits where you're at right now, and I'll get you started. Thanks for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I look forward to seeing you in the comments. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.